Each week we have been looking at biblical stories, and we might not have thought of as humorous. Today we'll be looking at the book of Esther, and our sermon is titled, Esther the Cocktail Queen. In Bible college, I learned the importance of how different parts of the Bible are interpreted differently. There's different ways that you interpret different genres. The Bible is a collection of 66 books. Those 66 books were determined by a standard known as the canon. That might be how I got my son's name. But these 66 books fall into categories. History is a very popular one. Books like Acts and 1st and 2nd Samuel, Joshua, Judges. Easily my favorite genre. I like to read the history. I like to read the stories of what happened and how it happened. There's other genres. Prophets, most of the books in the Old Testament with people's names. Epistles, which is a fancy word for letters. Psalms and Proverbs is poetry and wisdom. And you read them differently. You read poetry differently than you read history. And it's the same in our lives. We read different styles differently. Now, we as American Christians often fall into the trap of thinking the Bible is all history. We fall into this trap pretty regularly, that we must read it like a textbook, that it's intended to be read like a textbook when it is not. And we guard it that way. We get bent out of shape when someone questions a fact in it. But not all the time is the Bible meant to be a book of facts. Sometimes it's meant to be poetic. Sometimes it's meant to be apocalyptic, like the book of Revelation. And what happens when you start to read a book like Revelation as if it's history, it becomes very, very confusing because it's not how it was intended to be read. We must read different types of literature differently. You wouldn't read a comic book the way that you read the back of your cereal box for its ingredients. You wouldn't read an article online the same way you read a Shakespearean play. There's rules for how we read. There's rules. And the same is true of biblical literature. A book's genre determines how we read it. Of all the books in the Bible, one of the most difficult is the book of Esther. It is a very difficult book. Did you know there's one book in the Bible that doesn't mention God? There's one book out of those 66 that doesn't mention God. It's the book of Esther. It does not mention God. We love the book. We love it for the woman heroine in it, and she makes the most of what God has given her to help others who can't help themselves. But scholars have long struggled with this book. They've struggled with this book. What makes this book so difficult is we have tried to read it purely as history. And I do not believe the author intended it to be written or to be read as history. History is very difficult when it leaves God's name out of it completely, when it leaves God out completely. Esther has long provided a challenge to Christian Bible scholars. In fact, so many, so that it's the only book that some now believe was written with the idea that it might be a comedy. Some scholars have concluded that the story may in fact be fictitious, that there may be fiction in it. Now, before you get up in arms about that, I need to let you know something. Fiction doesn't mean the opposite of fact. Fiction is in the Bible. Jesus was fond of fiction. He told fictitious stories to teach something over and over again. He used parables, which are made-up stories, in order to teach a lesson. And he would do this. So even if this story is fiction, or if the names were changed to be funny, or things are exaggerated to be funny, it doesn't damage the truth of the Bible. Not one bit. We can read Jesus and we can have him telling the story in one place, and then a few words later hear him talking about who he is in relation to God, that he's the Son of God. And we can still take him at his word for being the Son of God, even though he just told us a story about a farmer who left 99 sheep to go and find one lost one. A story that was obviously made up, and we're intended to know it was made up. It does not damage the truth of the Bible, as long as we understand its intended meaning. There's some strong arguments. I want us to examine everything, and then we can each come to our own conclusion. There's some strong arguments that come in favor of at least things being changed from this book. You have Ahasuerus, the king of Persia, Vashti, the queen of Persia, Esther or Hadassah, depending upon if you want her Persian name or her Jewish name, the queen of Persia, Mordecai and Haman, princes or rulers of Persia, these high-ups. And there's some problems with these people. There's some problems that may have to do with their names. You see, the Persians were infamous for writing everything down. They are infamous for being bureaucrats. The Romans built roads and legislated. The Greeks philosophized. But the Persians were famous for being bureaucrats. They documented everything. That's what they did. And you see it in the book. They documented everything. They couldn't even remember everything they documented. And so they'd stay up when they couldn't sleep and have the documents read to them. This was commonplace. Everything is written and recorded. I mean everything. Every name of every official who ever served is recorded in the Persians. It makes one bat an eye when Haman is absent from the list. You can't find him anywhere in the list of the Persian documents. Mordecai as well. In fact, Mordecai's name actually comes across, it's very similar, just one letter off of one of the Persian deities, one of their false gods. An odd thing for a Jewish man to be named. Doesn't end there, though. It also skips over the death of 75,000 of the Jewish enemies at the end of the book. Not one mention in the Persian archives of that. It talks about 127 provinces in Persia. Persia was very proud that at their height they had 24. Very proud that at their height they had 24. But it doesn't end there. Queen Esther, her name is also one letter off of one of the Persian deities. Queen Vashti, neither queen is mentioned in their records. And King Ahasuerus, yours probably says Xerxes. I'll let you know the original says Ahasuerus. And really what our scholars have done is they've said Ahasuerus and Artaxerxes, they both start with A, they both end with S, let's fill it in the middle. That's what they've done. They've taken the lead. And there's something a little bit comic about it. There's something intended to be comical, that at least the names were changed to protect the innocent. If the story itself was not embellished and not changed, at least the names were changed to protect the innocent. And there's fun being poked throughout. But it doesn't end there. Also in favor of this book being fictitious is the way the Jewish people read and understand the book. The Jewish people don't have as much problem as Christian scholars do with this book. While Christian scholars struggle, the Jewish scholars don't. They have no problem celebrating the story with laughter and drinking. Rabbis have taught for a proper understanding of this book, you need to drink. One famous rabbi said, you need to drink so much to understand this book. You need to drink so much that you can't tell the difference between up with Mordecai and down with Haman. That is the light in which they see this book and read this book. Now the Jews are very serious about their texts. And if we were to read Genesis or Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, part of the law, they would read it very seriously. And it would be so important to them. And yet when they read the book of Esther, when it is read aloud, the kids are given noisemakers. And the adults stomp every time Haman's name is spoken. They make as much noise as they can to drown out this name of this infamous man that they hate so much. See, this book is intentionally is a little bit different. The book gives the Jews their holiday of Purim. And it's a jovial holiday. It would be like if our April Fool's Day and Thanksgiving had a baby. Okay, that is what this holiday is to them. It is an uplifting one, but it is one full of laughter. It is one that is meant to be funny. And so what do we make of it? There's a lot of compounding evidence that leads the reader to believe that it may be fiction, or at least lets the story have some room to change some names and to do things like that. But it doesn't change truth in the Bible. As long as we understand what the author intended this to mean, And I believe the author intends for us to learn something here. And so let's get into the book. The story starts out with a feast, your Bible probably says, mine does too. Our Christian scholars have done a lot to clean up the dark and seedy side of this story. But let's make clear, this is a drinking party. It is very clear from the text that this is a drinking party, that the king offers a drinking party and it lasts 6 months. 6 months, can you imagine the hangover that they had? 6 months of drinking. 6 months. This is a drinking party and not that formal banquet that we imagine. And in fact, the king had given a rule. Drink however you want, but no sipping allowed. That was his rule. That's what it says. No sipping allowed. So at the end of this 6-month cocktail party, the king opens the palace to the entire city for a week-long party that they continue drinking. Our story starts out with 2 big drinking parties. This is not our normal Bible story, is it? This is not what we normally read in the scriptures, and we are supposed to take this and notice there's something different about this story. It starts out with these 2 big drinking parties. At the end of this 7-day party, King Ahasuerus calls for his queen Vashti. And she says no. She says no. And the king is dumbfounded. He asks his officials, what's that mean? What's it mean that she said no? No woman has ever said no to me before. What is going on here? And so he asks his official, what's happening? And officials say, no queen has ever said no to a king. This has never happened. We don't know what is happening here. But make no doubt about it, king, you should put an end to this so that women everywhere don't start disrespecting their husbands. That is their advice. Now, this is a day and age where husbands did have a little bit of a primary citizenship over their wives. But throughout the scriptures, we see over and over again that women are often in charge of the household. The women are often in charge of their husbands. That they are the ones in charge, and the husband is at her beck and call and doing what she says. Abraham seemed like a strong man, but when Sarah said do something, he did it. Isaac, the son, we often see that Rebekah was the strong-willed one. Jacob had 2 wives, and his 2 wives were sisters, and they fought over him. And they would, while he was off working during the day, they would decide amongst themselves who got him that night. And when he got home, he had no say. And so here it's a little bit of a joke when we come to this part, and it is, you better put a pin in this, or women everywhere are going to start telling their husbands what to do. No, it is. It is supposed to be funny. And so, King Ahasuerus, who had never had a woman tell him no before, and did not know what to do, asked his advisors, and they said, get rid of her, and let's hold a big beauty contest. Let's hold a big beauty contest. Now, I know we were all given the VeggieTales version of this, but a year-long prep before going to see the king. A year long of having beauty treatments before they go and see the king. It sounds like overkill, doesn't it? This sounds ridiculous. But this is what we are given in this story, is that they were, all the beautiful young virgins in this community were brought together and given a year's worth of beauty regimen before they went to see their king. Now when Esther, or Hadassah, is chosen, her cousin Mordecai, also a Jew, tells her, don't tell them that you're a Jew. Don't tell them of your nationality. Don't tell them of your descent. Go there, but keep it quiet. And so she does. And this beautiful young woman is selected to be the next queen. The king likes her and sees her and says, this is the woman I choose. And so he chooses her. Esther wins the contest. Esther wins the beauty contest. And it's this wonderful time There's a wonderful moment in here where Esther is the next queen of Persia, the next queen of this great nation. And simultaneously, Mordecai hears of a plot where two men are trying to murder the king. And he tells Esther, and Esther warns the king and saves his life. And it looks like things are going well for Esther and Mordecai. And things look like everything will go well and they'll live happily ever after, right? No, just like in all good stories, there is someone trying to do them harm. Enter a man named Haman. Now Haman, we are told, is a descendant of King Agag, a king that Saul had spared long ago. King Saul was told to destroy this nation, and not only destroy this nation, but put their king to death and put their livestock to death, and he didn't. He spared their king and spared their livestock, and if you remember, Samuel the prophet came along and said, "You were told to kill everything. What is this bleating of sheep I hear in my ears?" This is a descendant of the king that he spared. And so these people don't like each other. There is a prejudice that exists here. There's a prejudice that exists here between Haman and Mordecai. Now, we're always taught that it's really one-sided, right? It's that Haman hated Mordecai, but we're told that Mordecai does not like Haman either. We know that they did not like each other. This is a very Hatfields and McCoy's vibe going on here. We usually make it out to be one-sided, but there's proof in the text that Mordecai hated Haman. It wasn't out of piety that Mordecai refused to bow to Haman. Nothing in his law forbid it. Nothing in his law forbid it. He could bow to the king, he could bow to officials, he could. But he hated this man. He hated what Saul had done and spared this man's forefather. These nations hated each other. And so he was not about to bow to Haman. So Haman hates this. He hates that Mordecai will not bow to him. And not only, he decides he's going to take care of it. And he's going to kill not only Mordecai, but the entire Jewish race. Talk about overkill. Like literally overkill. That's what that is. It is going to wipe out the entire Jewish people because this man made me mad. That is absolutely terrible. But that is what we're given in this text. Think about the Jewish people for a second. They have to be the most resilient people on the planet. From Pharaoh to Hitler and Haman and the modern Muslim neighbors today, it is a wonder that the Jewish people survive. Haman had it in his mind to get rid of them. To get rid of them all. Talk about taking a feud too far. Haman is in a high position of power, and so he goes to see the king. And he convinces the king that there's an awful people among them. This evil people, and he doesn't even name them. He doesn't even tell the king what people there are. He just says they're bad and we need to get rid of them. And the king agrees. This king is coming off as a little bit of a dope. I mean, he has to ask, what's it mean that the woman told me no? He has to ask for advice over and over again, and it seems like everything that's brought before him he agrees to. Without having any of the evidence or any of the proof, he agrees to Haman's plot to wipe out an entire people. Yeah, let's kill them all. Let's get rid of them all. And so Haman convinces him. Mordecai hears the news, and he is in mourning. And he tries to get Esther's attention, and he begs her to go and visit and talk with the king. Now Esther remembers what had happened to Vashti, the former queen, who didn't obey her king. She remembers the queen who didn't listen. And she says, I'm not going to be like that queen. I don't want the same fate she got. I'm not going to be Vashti. And we get Mordecai's famous line to his cousin Esther. Who knows, maybe you are here for such a time as this. Maybe you've been put in this position for such a time as this. And so Esther relents and asks him to have all their people pray. So the people pray. And Esther goes to the king. And she's called to his throne, and this is very good. He has extended his scepter to her, and that means that he's happy to see her. It's not a bad situation like Vashti's anymore. She won't suffer Vashti's fate. And the king says, "What can I give you? Up to half of my kingdom, ask and it's yours." And we as the readers are led to believe, okay, this is great. There couldn't be a better offer. He says, ask and I'll give you half of what I have, up to half of what I have, anything I can do for you, my queen. All she has to do is ask. Don't let my people be slaughtered. I mean, this is a pretty simple ask, right? But instead of what we expect to be asked, we're given something different. Because this is a comedy. And it's revolved around parties. And so once again, here we have it. Esther says, instead of let my people be free and don't kill them off, instead Esther says, will you come to my cocktail party? I put together a little shindig. Would you and Haman come over to my party? Esther, the cocktail queen. And so they come. And they have a wonderful evening. And the king, once again, at the end of this wonderful evening, says the exact same thing to her. Esther, ask for anything. Even up to half of my kingdom, and I will give it to you. And we as the readers, once again, are left to, okay, here, she's got the chance once again. Ask for your people not to be annihilated. Ask him to save your people. Tell him of this evil plot. Here's your chance, Esther. And once again she says, will you come to my party tomorrow? Will you come to my party again tomorrow night? Nope. And here's where the stories all start to collide. That night Haman goes home feeling really good about himself. Who else gets to go and dine with both the king and the queen? Not just one night, but 2 nights. Who else gets to go and dine with the king and queen? Who else is a trusted advisor of the king? Who else is in a position like him? And on his way home, he comes across Mordecai, and Mordecai refuses to bow. And it angers him so. So he goes home and he orders the gallows be built. 75 feet tall. That's 6 stories. Gallows to hang him on. 6 stories tall. What a story. And Mordecai is so upset. Now it just so happens that night the king couldn't sleep. And so he ordered that the transcripts be brought in and read to him. And so they bring them in and read them to him that night. And they're bringing them in and they're reading to him that night. Read the scrolls. And they begin to read the scrolls and they remind him of how Haman had saved him. They remind him of how Mordecai had saved him. And he says what was done for Mordecai. See, this king has 0 memory. It's a good thing everything is written down. What was done for this man? They said, nothing. So he calls for Haman, his great advisor, and he says to Haman, Haman, what would you do for a very special servant? What would you do for a man who has done so much for the kingdom? And Haman says, oh, he's got to be talking about me. This has got to be about me. No one's greater than me. He's going to honor me. And so Haman begins to put this out. And he says, he should have a parade. You should lead him around the town on your finest animal, and you should wear the king's robe and have somebody announce that here is the one whom the king favors, and he has done so much. And the king says some words that infuriate Haman. Go and do this for the Jew Mordecai. Talk about just everything that you could possibly hate coming back in your face for Haman. Mordecai, who you just built 75-foot gallows to kill. Give him the parade that you wanted for yourself, Haman. Not only does the writer love to use exaggeration, but it also likes to pull the rug out from under the reader. Not only do they like to talk about 6-month drinking parties and 75-foot-tall gallows and year-long beauty treatments and all these things that seem so over the top that we're not sure whether they're true or not. Not only do they do that, but they like to pull the rug out from under us over and over again. Here's where she's going to ask for freedom. Nope. Here's where she's going to ask for freedom. Nope. Here's where Haman thinks he's going to get everything. No. Over and over again, we're told that it's not going to go the way you think it's going to go. At this point, twice Esther has been asked, what do you want? I'll give you anything up to half my kingdom. And twice she said, come to my party. Haman thinks he's getting rewarded. Instead, he must reward the man he hates most. So that evening, Haman took solace in dining with the king and queen once more. That evening, Esther finally spills the beans and asks the king to spare her people. And she tells them of Haman's plot. And justice is served when Haman is hanged on the gallows he built for Mordecai. But still the people are in danger. As it turns out, bureaucracy has some terrible side effects. You can't undo the command that was given. So the king gives a new command. And this new command is that the Jews can kill their enemies before their enemies kill them. What a command. I think there were a lot of Jewish converts in that little bit of time. A lot of people saying, this sounds like a really good idea. I'm on board. And it says the Jews killed 75,000 people that day. This story, taken at face value, seems to imply that we need to make powerful friends. That we need to find success in beauty contests. That we need to kill our enemies before they kill us. Or is the truth in this story a reminder of the ridicule of power? That for as powerful as this king thought he was a puppet. For as powerful and great as Haman thought he was nothing. For as powerful and amazing as this kingdom thought they were with their excess and their drinking, it was all folly. The ridicule and folly of a drunk king, the ridicule of bureaucracy and legislation, the ridicule of hating your neighbor for no reason, the ridicule of feuds, the ridicule of pomp and parties. This book was all about power. The power of the king, and Esther rising to power to save her people. The funny part of this book, whether it's written as fiction or truth, is the power the entire time lay in the only person who's not mentioned in the book. The power the entire time is meant to be shown that it's not in the king's hands. And it's not in Esther's hands, and it's not in Haman's hands, or anybody else who thought they had power. The comedy in this book is the one person who's not named. God had all the power. And he still does. Everything else is a farce. Everything else where we try and convince ourselves that we have the power is wrong. Every grab at power that we try for, every time we try and get ahead, God's in control. That power you think you have is nothing. Whether the book is exaggerated, whether it's true to its word as history, or whether it's written as a comedy, one truth comes out. God has the power. God has the power. As the praise team comes up, what power do you need to give up today? What things are you trying to hold on to and trying to believe that you have all this power? That you're in control? Because it's time to let go of that and trust in the one who has real power.